What up? Welcome in to another episode of The Extra Point. Super stoked to be with y'all. Kendall, it has been 2 weeks since I have done a show. I had my daughter's birthday 2 Thursdays ago. America had a birthday last Thursday. It's not your birthday today, is it? Right? Like I'm not like missing. I'm not supposed to be like buying you cupcakes and a present, am I?
Nah, don't tempt me. I'll give you holidays to buy me stuff. Don't you
Okay,
worry about it.
All right, I was just making sure, man. I don't want to be that guy that's like forgetting to get you a little like a little cubby bear or something for your desk right there. A little bear's helmet or something. So,
You want to exchange
um,
gifts in the show, man? I'm in.
hey, I mean, Christmas is like 5, 6 months away. We could do like a on the air live white elephant present. That could be kind of fun. So, get to mix it up a little bit. I don't think I shouldn't say anyone in the history of podcasting. I'm sure someone has, but like at least podcasts that I listen to and videocasts that I watch, I haven't seen someone do it. I've seen Halloween. I've seen someone get dressed up as Santa, but I haven't seen a white elephant gift exchange. So maybe we got to do that, man. So welcome in. Super excited to be back. Took 2 weeks off for those that don't know as I get to the top of the show. Spent 2 Thursdays ago with my daughter. And then obviously last Thursday, we were cooking hamburgers and hot dogs, lighting off fireworks, celebrating America's birthday. We are obviously live every Thursday night here at 7 p.m. on the West Coast. You can see the ticker on the bottom. Follow me on Instagram at _extrapoint_FFB. Subscribe to Patreon. Listen to the Spotify account. At the end of the day, we love the video cast. It's a super exciting thing. We're going to continue to improve it. I'm going to get more guests on. But I'm also trying to build up the Patreon and the Spotify following. We're trying to build up the audio side of this. So got my buddy Kendall Vanderbilt with us tonight. Kendall, at the top of the show, tell the folks where they can find you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me again. I've missed you over the past couple of weeks, but glad we're back on. You can find me over at the Fantasy Football Tavern on YouTube, coming to the podcast format and things like that soon. But right now, just on YouTube and doing a lot of Dynasty content, focusing a little more into the redraft and getting really psyched for the Underdog best ball slate. They're coming out with new contests. I'm in best ball fever right now, so going to be seeing a lot of that on the channel. But come check me out. Come hang out. I'm doing a lot of mock drafts lately too on the show as well.
Yep, I am. I'm also. It is the summer of best ball. I am in major best ball mode right now. I'm actually finalizing. I know Kendall, you are as well, but finalizing a deal with Underdog right now to get our promo codes all set up. So for the listeners, we assume if you're listening to this show, you probably are already on Underdog. But if you're not, or you've got friends or family that are new to the best ball space, we'll have some promo codes coming out here probably in the next couple of weeks for you guys, which will be really exciting. I think the big thing for us tonight, obviously, is going to do some more Dynasty content and jump kind of in there in just a couple of minutes. But before we do, I want to just share some cool things that Kendall and I have actually been working on together. We may have been 2 weeks since we've done a show, but it had not been 2 weeks since I've seen you or talked to you. I think it'd actually be really weird, man, if I don't hear like from you every day because we talk every day. But Kendall and I are filming 32 videos, one for each NFL team. I don't know if Kendall will do all of them with me, but I know we kind of did a test one the other day for the Rams that we really liked. But we're trying to get more short content out to get some player takes and to just go through each team from a dynasty perspective. Are their values going to increase? Ceiling, floor? Where's their ADP? Because we know obviously dynasty startup drafts are still going to be going on through the majority of the summer and obviously into the early fall before the season kicks off. So those will be releasing soon. Obviously, we're going to release 1 to 2 of those a week. And then a big, I wouldn't say big, but like announcement from me is that I am doing my very best right now to get enough content recorded that I can release a podcast on Tuesdays and then still do the live show on Thursdays. But the live show is less me and now more guests, right? So Kendall, you'll be here. Obviously, I know I've got other folks that I'm trying to bring up onto the show and bring onto the Extra Point as well. So excited to have you here for 2 reasons. 1, I just love hanging out with you. 2, we are going to do a breakdown of an auction dynasty startup draft that actually was 2 or 3 weeks ago now. I think 3 weeks ago, a couple Wednesdays ago. And we live streamed the first hour of it, which we did 2 of those 2 nights in a row. And that was chaotic, man. It was fun. But that first hour, I feel like you and I kind of maybe didn't bid the way we should have, or, sort of like, oh, shoot, I felt like I was playing catch up that second hour. How did you feel after that first hour when we shut the stream down?
Man, I feel like it was one of those, like you're already doing, it's kind of an intense, difficult draft with auction. You got to be really locked in. And then you're like, hey, let's hang out with a good friend of mine and just talk and have a conversation while drafting. You should not give each other takes and trade, hey, what's going on? while trying to bid on a player. I feel like, yeah, in the first 10 minutes, we missed quite a few bids just from bantering. So streaming
Yep.
and an auction draft it was pretty brutal. So much fun though. I would recommend it. I want to do more of that.
100%. Which reminds me, if there's anyone listening who has any sort of production skill set, please hit me up. As if someone could help produce this show so we can just do the content, that would be awesome. So
Oh,
I
amen.
actually do have a guy that I've been talking to. He does some really cool stuff. So that's maybe a little secretive, but we'll get that out here in just a couple of weeks. So but let's get in, man. Let's go ahead and give the people what they're here for. I need to make sure I've got the right. I don't want to show that screen. I just traded Ramondre Stevenson. Y'all don't need to see the outcome of my trade here. I did trade Ramondre for a second and a third. Just bring that up real quick. Kendall and I were just talking about that off screen. My team in that league not going to win this season. I'm not really in like a rebuild, and I'm also not like a playoff team. Probably my wide receiver room is loaded. It's a great wide receiver room. My running back room is pretty thin. And so I felt like a second and a third to get Ramondre off the roster. I don't see his value increasing next season. I do see a lot of rookies in the second round next year that I like, and now I've got multiple second round picks. So to grab one, maybe two running backs next year, should be good. We'll see how it all plays out. But let's jump in. This is a 10-team format. It is a one quarterback league, two running backs, three wide receivers, and if my memory is right, Kendall, triple flex. Is that what we did on this one?
We did
I think
one
it's
quarterback, triple flex.
triple
We
flex.
thought it would be
Yeah,
the most fun for the auction
right.
format where it's just a billion flexes, so we can really get some battles going.
Yeah, let's get some guys in instead of having to, worry about what we need each week and trying to split hairs on one guy over the other. Let's get six guys on the field instead of, four. So I want to start at the top with just a couple of, you and I were talking before the show. Let's go through a couple of standout auction values. And what we're going to do, we don't know these. So I'm going to kick it to Kendall first, and then he's going to kick it to me, but it's a surprise. So I want just like maybe 1 minute. And the first name I'm going to give you is, and we try not to talk about each other's teams, but this is a standout no matter whose team it's on, Kendall. Michael Pittman on your roster, actually, for $47. Give me your thoughts on that value, and obviously just, what Pittman, obviously the contract, Richardson attachment, but your thoughts on Michael Pittman.
My general thoughts on Michael Pittman are, I like that he's a rather versatile receiver. He can play X, but he can also do a couple of other things. He can win in multiple ways. Just the general idea being he can flex to a lot of offensive schemes. He's always going to be on the field. He doesn't need to be, Amon-Ra or AJ Brown or anything like that 24/7, but he's always going to have a ridiculously high snap share. And he performed quite well on a mediocre offense, maybe a little above average. I think they outperformed. But with pretty poor quarterback play, he definitely made it happen. And I think as quarterback play, in my opinion, I'm a huge Anthony Richardson fan. So as he develops and the offense as a whole takes a step forward, I think he stands to gain. Very similar to, he's like Chris Olave light for me. And then I've seen it on the field. I get more consistency. I think I get some better coaching, play calling happening his way. And I don't think he gets a lot better this year, but I don't think he falls, even with a more competition coming into the wide receiver room. I think that's evened out by the fact that the overall offensive ecosystem is going to be very positive for him. He's already paid. So, if I owned a business and spent that kind of money, I'm probably going to give him the rock a couple of times. So combination of, he has a high enough ceiling to be meaningful. He's got a fantastic floor for many, many years. And, if I want to get the next tier above Pittman in an auction, I'm spending $70-$80 for that next tier up. I'm just talking about Olave light. I think Olave went for 76, I think I'm looking at here. And so being able to save, nearly a 50% discount on that tier for what I'm getting, I was pretty happy with it. Full disclosure, I didn't sell him. So I love him, but he was my immediate value. I got a ridiculous haul for him. I was pretty happy. Maybe not ridiculous. I think he's such a good player that it's pretty neutral, but I got a first plus for him and felt pretty good.
For sure. And I love what you said, because that's actually really quickly just kind of my last point here before you give me your first name. But you're talking about tiers and you're talking about guys on the board. And if we're in a snake draft, the players that are generally going around Michael Pittman's range, right? You see Drake London, $70 on the board there. Chris Olave, $76. Brandon Ayuk, the closest in price, $51. Devonta Smith, $73. Now, those players are probably going a little bit before Pittman, but they're probably going. I mean, Kendall, you and I have done some shows about ADP. they're probably going in the third round, maybe fourth, right at that 3-4 turn. That's where these wide receivers are coming off the board. So to me, to get Pittman at $47, number one, great bid. Number two, great player, even if you traded him. I think at the end of the day, you're right. You're saving $20, $30, which in an auction draft is for sure one more player, but it's potentially as many as two. And obviously we know there's not much on the waiver wire. So yeah, great value. It was a clear standout. And yeah, let's give me the first name you got there on your little your surprise sheet over there.
My surprise sheet. Okay, I'm gonna go to the middle of my surprise sheet list over here.
Okay.
It's a player I've been rising on quite a bit. The only reason it's a value for me is because it's a player I'm rising on. I think particularly when you look at the auction format, it's fun to compare players that are like one tier away and see the difference in value, similar to the Pittman conversation. My kind of screaming for me auction value, I think in general it's still a value, is going to be Devin Achan. He goes off the board for $56. Let me give you my main take here, okay? Because there's some volatility, there's a little bit of risk involved. He smaller, could get
You're
banged
supposed
up.
to be a good player for me to do a take on.
Well,
you're rolling, man. Go for it. You're rolling.
I just rolled 2 takes in a row. I just realized I thought you were asking me for another take.
No. It's supposed to be good. It was the surprise sheet. You're supposed to give me a guy. It's roll with Devin Achan. We're good, man.
This is what happens when we write our own notes and don't share them on the same screen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We won't do surprise players again without.
All right. Well, I will wrap this one up quick. This means it's cursed. It's a cursed take. It might not be good. Here's my thing with Devin Achan. I'll wrap it up real quick and toss it over to you. He has a similar snap share situation to like a Jahmyr Gibbs, but he's going for like half the price. If Gibbs is going for 100 and I can get Achan for 56 and then spend another $50 somewhere else, I like that potential upside. I don't think he's quite Gibbs or that tier, but he's close enough that I think there's a nice value proposition there. And again, good offensive ecosystem, does all the things I like. I'm just rising on him, and I like his price compared to the next tier. But
yeah, I mean, look, it's a standout. It's a standout for two reasons. Number one, let's just talk about Achan, the player himself. It's a standout because at the end of the day, we know Raheem Mostert is an expiring asset. We don't know what Jalen Wright is. Tua does not run the football. You don't want him to run the football for obvious reasons. So, this is a dynasty show. We're talking about the next, I would say, 3 years of Achan because we've talked a million times. We play dynasty in a 2 to 3 year window. I think his shelf life is 3 years. Yes, he's got some injury concerns, but I think the drafting of Jalen Wright is actually to take away making him a bell cow. He's not built to be that, but like you said, his snap share is going to increase. He can take a ball to the house. We love the Miami offense because of the speed, because of the explosive play calling of Mike McDaniel. I think the challenge with Achan is the same as a challenge with any other player who's perceived to be the guy in the offense, but it's like Trey Benson comes to mind. Trey Benson's perceived to be the RB1 in that offense, but he's not. James Conner is the running back 1 in Arizona, at least for this season. And you don't want to hear this, folks, but Raheem Mostert's still the running back 1 in that offense, right? And I think that that's something that people don't necessarily want to hear and they don't maybe not agree with. And I struggle with that myself because I would give the ball to Achan as the RB1, but they just paid Mostert for 2 more seasons. Now, what he can do with the ball in his hands is electric. And you're right, he could touch the ball 15 to 18 times a game and he can win you a week. He's a 30-point, fantasy point type of a player. So those are my first reasons why he's a standout for the player himself. The other thing that stands out to me in this draft, and I'm going to go and show Philly Bulldogs right here. And Kendall, this was after the stream. So for the people that I know Victorious is in here and he's got some cool comments I'm going to show in a second, but I know he was watching this first hour of the draft. The running back market just exploded, and Pacheco going off the board for $73, James Cook coming off the board for $72, JT coming off the board at $79. So you're telling me that Pacheco and Cook, who are not top 5 running backs, is coming off a couple dollars cheaper than a top 5 running back. You're saving $20 on Achan, and I have Achan ahead of both of those guys. So to me, that's a really great value. So props to Rose Mitchell for getting Achan as cheap as he did. As I look back on this board, I'm thinking to myself, what did I spend my money on? And I remember I bought some expensive wide receivers, and we were talking during the draft, and I drove the price up on Josh Allen and got stuck with him. So there's worse players to be stuck with than Josh Allen. But yeah, Achan at 56 is awesome. I love the value. I like the player. We love the offense and the explosiveness there. So yeah, really good value at $56. Nice player for Rose Mitchell to have.
Who do you like?
Yeah, my second one actually for you is also a running back. David Montgomery for $12 is stupid.
Ooh.
Talk to me about Mr. Montgomery.
He's on my wall right now. I
Yeah,
love it.
I know. That's why I know, right in the middle.
Oh man. All right, so one you can do like a double take on this too, because not only is he a great value in this auction, but he was such a value in the NFL for what they paid him, for what they got. I mean, he didn't play 17 games and still scored 10 touchdowns. Like that's pretty difficult to do. Um, yeah, pretty happy. So why do I like him? I think he's got more life than I think people are giving him credit for. He's got the contract. He's got 2 more years left on it. And
Yep.
based on what he's shown, I do think that he's not going to get some crazy contract after this, but I do think he plays football after those 2 years. Very different
Sure.
form, but he's
Sure.
still going to be someone you can plug and play into a lineup. I'm trying to think of an example looking at the board right now, but I don't think he's going to be any worse than like. I'll think of a better example later on, but I don't think he gets any worse than like a Brian
What I
Robinson.
just said. I think it's Raheem Mostert and James Conner. I mean, he'll be an older guy. He'll be on his third contract. He won't be the starter probably on a team, but he'll still have value.
Super reliable in a lot of different ways. I like that too, because I think clearly what Detroit wants to do in that offense is they want Gibbs to be Gibbs, but similar to what we're talking about with HN, right? They don't want to wear either of them out. They both got injured at different times. They are clearly favored to have a pretty deep playoff run, so it's more important for your RBs to be healthy during the early season slate. So I think he's going to have some pretty big playoff usage. I think he could be a real league winner down the stretch. He's been that. We've seen that in fantasy football before, where David Montgomery goes on an absolute tear down the stretch, and it's kind of the forgotten gem that can just make it happen for you. Yeah, with Gibbs there, I don't think he's going to catch. I mean, I'd be surprised if he gets more than 30 targets on the season, but I do think I'd pencil him in for another 10 touchdowns in such a safe offense. And that's going to give you such a ridiculous floor. That team's so good too. Think of this: who runs the clock out in the fourth quarter when they're up by 3 touchdowns, and they're going to beat a lot of teams that way? It's not Gibbs. It's going to be Monty. It's probably going to be that third string guy that people are kind of hyping up for the return game. But if the game's close enough, Monty is going to get his 20 carries. He could get 20 carries at a 60% snap share. That is something you can't get in very many offenses.
To me, Monty is the most valuable RB1B in the NFL. And I say that because, yes, Gibbs is the guy now in that offense. We expect Monty to still be very productive. But if Gibbs is unavailable, you have a high-scoring offense on a team where we have seen him carry and score touchdowns and get yardage and chew up the clock. And we expect that division. You and I talk about that division a lot. I think that division is going to be very competitive this year. And if the Bears can develop Caleb Williams and the Vikings can get a running back next season, I think that's the best division in football, top to bottom. I really do. I mean, the Packers are there. The Lions are clearly there. I think the Bears are up and coming, and the Vikings are very good. And they've got some, figure out the rookie quarterback. But yeah, Nick Groney, $12 for David Montgomery, screaming value. Who's your second guy?
Well, I guess I kind of already ripped the first two right off the bat. So let me give you this is my third guy, but it's more of a tier of players. But I'm going to highlight 2 in particular. I'll pick one if I have to. So I'm going to go. It's like the Lad BTJ tier.
Yeah,
I'll just single out Lad because I like him a lot. He's already getting steamed up, but BTJ also pretty cheap. That $23 and then $26. That tier of rookie. Sort of like tier 2, tier 3, right after Rome goes in your rookie drafts, kind of that next tier 2 of wide receiver. I think they are screaming values as I look at this board compared to the amount of money you spend on them versus like the next tier up. Even just seeing that, like Keon Coleman, I know you grabbed him for 40, and I love his upside. You kind of had to overpay for Allen, right? But then you look at some of these. I looked at that first, and I looked at, okay, so who else is going in that sort of like $30 to $40 range? And realistically, there's actually not much. It's like wide receiver jumps from this 20 tier up into like the 40s pretty quickly. In a lot of cases where you're looking at Pickens and things of that nature. I just really like that you don't need to pick. You don't really know who's going to hit and who's not going to hit. But for the price, it's really baked in that you don't need them to be crazy, right? I mean, JSN went for 26, right? Because he's already kind of he had a horrible season. And he's still going for $26 essentially, right? Those guys still have all the upside and they're going right around the same. It's like there's this price baked in of there's some caution. Even if they're not crazy, you're not overpaying for them. Like that tier, I think they have a lot of upside. And those two guys can already step in and be a producing wide receiver as a rookie from week one, where not everyone can. And that's why I like Ladd in particular there at 23.
So, for the listeners, Kendall and I get hit up all the time with, "Can you evaluate our team? What would you do in this trade? Hey, who would you trade this guy for? What is this player worth?" And we're going to actually do some shows on completely just an hour devoted to trades and values and like what do we see in real life? What are we actually getting offered? What are we offering? What are questions that we're getting? So all of that's coming probably next week, actually, to be honest. But I say all that because McConkey and BTJ going for $3 to me, it basically is telling you with the amount of spend is that there's very little to separate the two. What I love is this rookie class, Xavier Worthy for $25 is in that mix as well. I believe, and I really do believe this, that, and the reason I brought up, what we're doing is I had a guy ask me like, "Hey, would you trade this guy for that guy?" And one of the players he brought up was DeAndre Swift. And I said, he hasn't done his rookie draft yet, which I thought was a little bit crazy, but that's just how his league does it. And that's fine. There are some rookie drafts that have not been done yet. He asked me, would you trade Swift for this, that, or the other? And I don't remember every single, he's asked me like 12 questions today, which I love. I'm not upset about it, but I just don't remember everything off the top of my head of what his different scenarios were. I do remember one of my answers though, which is ask yourself, is DeAndre Swift going to be more valuable next season or the year after than he is right now today? The answer is probably no. But Brian Thomas Jr. very, very clearly could be the wide receiver one for his team this year and next year. And I expect if he's not the wide receiver one this year with Christian Kirk still in the play, to be the wide receiver one for his team next year. I expect Keon Coleman to be the wide receiver one for his team this year and next year. I expect Ladd McConkey to be the wide receiver two for his team. I think he's going to maintain his role. I think he's going to be a valuable player. I don't see a path for him to be the wide receiver one. I'll be honest. I think the Chargers are going to trade for somebody. And I've told you this, Kendall, you know this. I think T Higgins is going to wind up in LA next year.
I put a lot of shares into Herbert, thinking somewhere along those lines similarly. So I kind of agree with you there.
I mean, it's like, and if it's not Higgins, like it's going to be somebody. You know what I mean? Like I just don't see a world where the Chargers are going to go and draft because I don't think they're going to be very good. So they're probably a top 10 pick next year. Are they? Is Brain Trust over there really going to go and draft a high caliber wide receiver in the top 10? Probably not. They're going to build that offensive line. They're going to grab someone on the defense. Like that's just the way that Harbaugh is going to build. But I absolutely see them trading for somebody who's a proven wide receiver opposite McConkey, not trading for a similar archetype. So to me, these rookies like A.D. Mitchell can't be the wide receiver one on his own team, barring injury. Like Michael Pittman's the guy. He just got paid. He's already been the wide receiver one. Him and Richardson have good rapport, blah, 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 blah. My point being is that with these values for McConkey and Thomas to spend, you were talking about guys in that $40 to $50 range. Philly Bulldogs spent $50 basically, right? 26, 23 was at $49. So he spent $50 basically for two players. And so I think it's really good men in management. You look at the players going in that range, Tank Dell, $52, DJ Moore, $52. I mean, those are guys we like. Those are guys we think are going to have great seasons. They've certainly been, featured. I mean, DJ Moore just had his first ever wide receiver one season, but give me two players, over one guy any day of the week. So good spending, good value. I think it's interesting the rookies being so closely coupled together. Victorious, can't stop falling in love with BTJ. He fits the vertical Jags offense so well. 100% agree with that. I mean, you all, if you watch the show, if you listen to the show, you know I'm not a Gabe Davis truther. I don't think anyone really is unless it's best ball. I've got a lot of shares in best ball. But yeah, I think BTJ and that vertical threat, we saw it at LSU. And look, he was overshadowed by Neighbors. So I think to me, it's really cool to see what guys' values are and obviously how they're going to pan out. All right, last name for me. And I can't even read my own. Oh, Jaden Daniels, $15. Talk us through the 102 second quarterback off the board to the Washington
Jaden Daniels. Man, I almost wrote him down for you, actually. It was pretty close. So, yeah, I like that.
We tend to think alike.
I like that so much. Okay, so this is fantasy football, right? It's Dynasty, so we're maybe a little more conscious of downside because we have to live with that downside for a lot longer, right? But I'm just going to focus on the upside here, right? Washington has been a tire fire for a long time. It feels like things are turning right? Front office ownership, things are going in that direction. It's kind of it's one of those offenses I like to buy into because they just kind of they get a little cheaper because of their system. And a lot of the
Yeah.
narrative around Jaden Daniels was, is Washington super good? There was a lot of like, oh, he could, he could have the RG3, like he doesn't have to be fantastic. I haven't seen a rushing quarterback come into the NFL in the last couple of years, like recently, the last maybe 3 to 4. That wasn't just fantastic for fantasy. I mean, they're
Yeah.
really hitting at a really high clip now that even semi-mobile quarterbacks are getting schemed into things. I think it took some offensive coordinators and head coaching to really scheme it up. Justin Fields didn't work. My Bears have the worst front office head coaching situation in the last 20 years, possibly. I mean, we're the example of how not to do it, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, he has to be just okay with that rushing upside to be fantastic. As a rookie, what's kind of your big challenge, right? The game's fast. The game comes at you pretty quick. As a rookie with legs, you can do what Kyler did a lot his rookie year, which is
Right.
I'm tiny. There's big guys chasing me. I'm faster than all of you. I remember. Okay, I'll just outrun them, right? You can sometimes just buy yourself a couple of games just by using your legs as a rookie. And then as the game comes to you, then we can see what he's got with his
Yeah.
throwing arm. Lamar,
Yep.
not a great passer when he came in. I didn't love it. I still don't love it. I'll be honest. I'll be the first person to tell you. I don't think Lamar is a great long-term dynasty value just because I think when the legs go, I don't love what he's got there. So for all those reasons, I think he has 10 rushing touchdown upside. I like that a lot. Their running game isn't anything to be impressed with. So I think the rushing touchdowns at the goal line are even more heavily skewed to what he has going on. He balled out with very, very good wide receivers. Terry McLaurin is a perennial 1,000-yard receiver with terrible quarterback play. What could he be if he was a little bit better? Dotson was steamed up. It's maybe one of the more underrated wide receiver rooms. And they have a McCaffrey in tow, which
I was going to
is
say
usually
Luke
never a bad
McCaffrey.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, while you were chatting, right? Like I pulled up because you said it perfectly. Justin Fields, not good for the NFL. The NFL has literally said, we don't value you. We don't think you're a quality quarterback. The Steelers, I think he's going to end up beating Russ out for that job. Maybe not in week 1, but I think he's going to have value this season. Justin Fields in 2022 played 15 games. In half PPR, he was the QB7. He passed for 2,242 yards. Let me say that again. He passed for 2,242 yards. That is awful. He ran for 1,143 yards. So he basically ran for half of the total of his passing yards. And he finishes QB7. And it wasn't because he was throwing the ball. So, yeah, to me, Jaden Daniels he's a rookie. He's going to take time. But I love everything you just said. I agree with everything you just said. I like the idea that Cliff Kingsbury has a mobile quarterback because that's obviously a staple of his offense. $15 for somebody a year from now, we could be talking about as this year's potentially this year's CJ Stroud. It would not surprise me if we're talking about Jaden Daniels as a top 7 quarterback next season. I wouldn't be surprised. I could see it going both ways. I could see him being a top 15 guy and just kind of being a good, good QB2. I don't think he's a game manager, but I think the ceiling says he can be that guy. So yeah, like it. Who's your last player that you're going to surprise me with that I get to chat about for a minute or two here?
Let me throw one more splash in there. All right, I'm going to throw it out there just because I'm starting to get even higher on this guy's what the rest of his career could potentially be on that team, and I'm really loving Dalton Kincaid, even at his price. And I don't know that his price was a screaming value based on what's on the board,
right?
But I think next year he's going for double. If he has the season, I think he's going to. I think Kincaid really is the actual wide receiver 1 in Buffalo. I loved what I saw from him last year. I love what the team can do with him. I love what he can do for Josh Allen. Here's what I know about the Buffalo Bills. They have a Kansas City Chiefs problem. They have entire teams in Buffalo that are studying how the hell do we beat the Chiefs? What have the Chiefs done to them every year for a long time? Hey, we got this guy, Travis Kelce. He's real good. He's going to beat the absolute piss out of you, right? They have their biggest rival uses a tight end as their wide receiver 1 for the last, since Tyreek, right? And even then it was close. So I see no reason why they're not going to go in a similar fashion where they're going to try to run the ball a little bit more like how they use Pacheco. And I think they're going to try to get their tight end involved a lot. And I think Kincaid is absolutely going to average 9+ targets a game this year, somewhere along those lines. His touchdown upside is maybe a little bit capped with Allen in the red zone. I'm just not worried enough. I think in PPR formats, he's going to be pretty fantastic. And from a dynasty asset, I do think he rises above Trey McBride by a lot. I actually think that's not as close as it should be. And I think Kincaid is actually probably going to top Laporta on like their high end finishes. I think Kincaid's high end finish versus Laporta's is pretty close, but I think Kincaid's might actually be higher because Buffalo wants to throw the ball and score more points than I think Detroit would like to rush for 60 touchdowns this season if they could. And I think that's what's going to help Kincaid out a little bit. So I like Kincaid. I just think if he's the player where you're like, should I really spend the money on him? I'm officially at the look. Tight ends are getting a little bit more expensive because people like the flashy tight end. And I think Kincaid is still a little bit too cheap.
Yeah, I mean, to me, coming off the board here is tight end 4 tied with the Kincaid in terms of value spend, $29 for each of them, and then Andrews at just a tick higher at $30. I have Kincaid as the tight end 3 in Dynasty right now. I've been high on him since he came out. I watch a lot of college football. I'm a big Florida Gators fan. I grew up in Gainesville, Florida. Why is that important? Because watching Dalton Kincaid for Utah, Florida played a home and home series against Utah for the final 2 years of Kincaid's career. So I saw the kid his junior and his senior season in college, and I thought, man, this is a good archetype. He's got a good skill set, big body, athletic, good hands. I'm curious to see, will this kid translate well? And then boom, gets drafted by Buffalo, and then Steph Diggs gets shipped off to Houston. You and I have talked about it all offseason. The horse has been beaten to death. I've said many times Kincaid and Cook are the big winners in the Steph Diggs trade away. I love Keon Coleman. I'm very excited about what I think he could be in that offense, but if he's not good, and that's a real possibility, and even if he is good, Kincaid to me is probably the number 1 target in that team. I agree with you. I think he's an Andrews. I think he's a Kelsey. Laporta is not the number 1 target on his own team, and he's not going to be. That's Amon-Ra's job. So unless Coleman really, breaks out and just is this complete target hog, I see Kincaid as the number 1 passing option. And even if Coleman breaks out, I see him as the number 1B or, possibly the 2 passing option, right? James Cook catches passes. That's his skill set. He does not score rushing touchdowns. The rushing touchdowns obviously are going to Josh Allen. Now Ray Davis is in the mix. I think the passing touchdowns are going to Kincaid. That's where I see him going. Coleman's a big body guy. He's a contested catch guy. That was kind of his MO coming out of Michigan State. He was a basketball player before he got to Florida State. So I certainly see, jump balls inside the red zone for Coleman, but Kincaid can get his touchdowns into the double digits. I think he has a real possibility to finish as the tight end 1 this season. So I just want to talk about a team build really quickly, and then I don't know how much we'll get through, but Kendall and I wanted to talk about some ambiguous backfields in Dynasty. Team that I want to highlight is Nick Groney's team, and reason I want to highlight it is, number 1, I think people will be afraid if you're doing an auction, if you're new to auction, people are always afraid to spend the big money. Oh, I'm not going to have anything left. I'm going to be getting all $1 players. And if you spend the money wrong, yes, you will be. But number 1, I really like Nick Groney's build, so I think he has a good team. Number 2, he spent money. He got JJ and CeeDee Lamb. I have CeeDee Lamb as the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty, and I have Justin Jefferson as the wide receiver 4 right now. So to get 2 top 5 guys at basically the same price, it's a $500 budget. To me, it can be scary for some people. But you look at what the rest of this team, Olave for $76. You have to start Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and Chris Olave every single week. That's not fun. I don't want to play against that. You don't want to play against that. And we're in this league. So to me, that's incredible value. To get DK Metcalf, who is obviously not in that same tier, but I think you could make the argument that Olave and Metcalf aren't that far apart. I think, to me, Olave is higher as far as a tier break is concerned, but I think there are some people that are excited about DK and they're down on Olave because of Derek Carr. Either way, my point being is he's got 4 starting wide receivers who are, not arguably, they are the number 1 passing options in their offense. And then to come back with Alvin Kamara and David Montgomery, who we talked about a little bit already, as his 2 starting running backs, with kind of a mishmash of Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler, Chuba, Kimani Vidal, Rico Dowdle. Like it's not a sexy running back room, but it's guys that aren't going to get you zeros. They're going to play. to get Kelsey, who obviously is not a great dynasty asset, but he's going to be valuable until, as he says, until the wheels fall off, baby. And then to get Dak at 17 to stack with CD, to me, it's incredible, right? You see like Baker Mayfield here as his backup quarterback for $2. So, I mean, it's a good dynasty roster. It's very top heavy. There's not a ton of depth, but I think at the end of the day, this is a team that could win. It's a playoff team for sure. And I think it's a team that could win the league based off these wide receivers. Now, I think it's possible if these running backs don't produce ceiling performances, if Gibbs really just truly dominates the backfield or if Monty isn't available, that's going to be his downfall. But I think from a value perspective, being able to spend the money early on, being able to still build out a really good team to get a stack in Dynasty, especially a Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb stack. Nice job. Really good team, Nick. But to be honest, I think it's a really good example of you can still spend top dollar for the top players and still build a quality team. So 1 minute on that, Kendall. Any thoughts on his group, or was there another build just really quickly? I don't know if there was. Was there another build that kind of caught your eye that you want to talk
No,
about?
actually, I studied him. I know in pre we were kind of talking about his build in particular.
Yeah.
I'll go on him because I think he has an interesting build from an auction standpoint, but this is where knowing your format's important for knowing what builds are possible, viable, or even optimal. In this case, this is a non-tight end premium league, right?
Right.
So when you're going, hey, I'm going to go spend 40% of my budget or something pretty crazy at super high end wide receivers. Well, your onesies usually suffer. All your redrafters know this. You typically can't take a high-end quarterback and tight end and still have position players. Something has to give,
Correct.
and you got to plan it, right? Well, the plan here is simple. I know if I go get CD, he has a cheap stack, probably an undervalued stack right now, so that helps. He's just punting tight end almost completely and saying, well, I'm going to win now and I'll figure it out later. So Kelsey's kind of a dynasty punt in some ways. You could kind of say that when it comes to long-term value. But when you pair that with one of the big differences I have between Dynasty and Redraft is how like the end of your bench kind of functions and how to play that optimally. In Dynasty, I'm very much of the belief that you want really core, top 24 wide receivers, and then you want a bunch of dart throws at running back because, like season to season, injuries are going to happen at running back. We know having these dart throw backups, all of a sudden you have to dump your entire fab budget to remember when Nick Chubb was a fab budget, winner back in the day, things of that nature. That's that you have to have that there. Well, in Dynasty, that can happen season to season, right? So you actually want a lot of these, $1 dart throws at running back because they might sit on your bench for an entire season, but next year when the RB market changes, all of a sudden they might rise to a little bit of value where I don't think you want a bunch of $1. Like, man, on a really good day, I could see them as like a wide receiver 2B, 2C in this ambiguous offense. That's just not going to move the needle enough in Dynasty in particular. So I think he executed his build in a way that he could have screwed it up a couple of ways, in my opinion, but he kept to it. He said, all right, I'm going to spend all this money at wide receiver for the top end. And then how am I going to solve running back? I'm going to take I'm going to handcuff where I can't afford to, right? I'm going to make sure I grab Chandler with Jones to give me a little bit of safety because I'm barely going to have starters some weeks. And then if you look at the very bottom end of his draft, he's got like 5 $1 dart throws that are all under the age of 24 and all have, they don't have crazy upside, but they're still, young rookie-ish running backs that have a shot. So yeah, he's not a rookie anymore, but Evan Hull. I like that. It's just, I don't know. I've barely seen him play. The Watson guy over in Denver, he got a little bit steamed up. Rodriguez next year, what does the Washington backfield look like next year? I have no idea, but Rodriguez is who cares about this year? Play for next year with these dart throws. He's not just a handcuff dart throw this year. I like the $1 running backs in Dynasty because what can happen next year? Really executed build, like a lot of picks.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think it's a smart way to spend your money, and that's the truth is that in Dynasty you're just going to have some guys on the end of the bench that never play, and at the most basic concept is that's just you're going to turn that part of your roster over every single year with late third round picks, right, second round picks, and hope that you get something. You find the next Puka. So let's jump into the comments here real quick. We know we missed a couple, but we were talking earlier about a value, Michael Pittman. Victoria saying Pittman is like a Christian Kirk type. He's not an exciting player to draft, but he's super reliable. I mean, to me, Michael Pittman's just steady. You know what you're going to get. I think the downside of Michael Pittman is you're just probably not getting the touchdown upside that you're going to get with a higher value wide receiver because of Richardson and JT. I don't know. I would love him to be I have him in a ton of places. I would love him to be a double-digit touchdown guy. I don't see it. But yeah, it's a great comment. I think it's perfect. Brandon Dorsey, what's up, man? Welcome to the show. I'm in a league I'm in a 14 team league with this guy. That league's wild. We'll have to talk about that on an episode one time, man. That league is a lot of fun. It's crazy. There's so many players. 2025 RB class is going to shake up a lot of teams' RB rooms. I said this at the top of the show, Brandon. I don't know if you were here yet or not, but I traded Ramondre Stevenson earlier today for a second and a third round pick. The second wasn't actually the manager I traded Stevenson to. It wasn't actually his pick. It's a different roster. The roster's not great, so it's probably going to end up being at worst a mid second. It's got potential to be an early second. I love the running back class in 25. I love the receiver class in 25. The quarterback class, not great. So I think what we saw this year was you wanted Brooks, you wanted Benson. I have a hard. We Kendall, you and I talk about this all the time. We know someone is going to emerge. We know there's going to be guys that come out of nowhere or end up being good from this class. I have a hard time with some of these guys seeing the path. Like I love Marshawn Lloyd. You and I talk about Lloyd all the time. There's a path that exists for him to be the guy. We talk about that as his upside case. There's also the downside that Josh Jacobs is actually good. And last year was just a bad season. He wasn't in camp. He was the holdout. He wasn't fit. The Raiders sucked. Like, what if Jacobs is good? You know what I mean? Like, obviously the Packers have shown that they're going to use multiple running backs, but I think people are bad. I think part of I love Marshawn Lloyd. I've done it myself. I think part of the reason people are betting so highly on Lloyd is because they're betting against Jacobs. And what if we're all wrong and that's a bad bet? So those are things to think about. But yeah, Brandon's comment, 2025 running back class, going to shake it up a ton, which is a perfect transition because I want to talk about some ambiguous running back rooms in Dynasty as the extra point tonight. So as we jump in, not going to do a 2-minute drill tonight. We're going to go straight to the end of the show. And we're going to double up, triple up, whatever you want to call it, however much time we have left, we're going to devote to it. But the extra point is all about finding the little differences. And that's obviously the namesake of the production. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. You get 3 minutes to talk about Denver's backfield. Javonte Williams in this draft, $17. Jaleel McLaughlin, $12. Audric Estime, $5. Samaje Perine, $1. Kendall, what do you make of that? And talk about Denver's backfield. 3 minutes on the clock. Go.
Okay, sure. Javonte, don't love him. Don't really even like him. I like that everyone else hates him. So his price has gotten to a point where he's serviceable from a draftable standpoint. If that kind of makes sense. I don't mind him at $17. It's a cheap enough range that you're not going crazy. Here's my thing with Javonte. Okay, I typically don't love drafting players who were good. They had an injury and we haven't seen it since. Usually it's a bad bet, particularly at running back. I'll make a slight exception for Javonte, just that he's okay, because when we did see it, it was pretty fantastic. The offense was never that good. He's multifaceted, and everyone's making a huge deal of all this competition, and Jaleel looked great last year and all these things. Javonte still, while being kind of still had the job, and I think he's going to be better this year. Nobody did enough to push him out last year. I think a lot of the camp and press and stuff is actually, it's more coach speak to get him to say, Javonte, guess what? You could be out of a job. Like, do you want to be here? Do you want to be the guy? Because you're gonna have to be something. I don't think he's going to be insane, but I do think he's going to be very serviceable on an offense that will occasionally surprise people. I like Denver's defense. They were fantastic last year. I like investing in ambiguous backfields because if you can't predict it, the price always goes lower. They have a great defense, which means in close games, they're going to run the ball a lot. You always want a running back that has a great defense. Breece Hall, I love having him with a great Jets defense. If that Broncos defense is as good as we thought it would be when they were picking them to maybe make a Super Bowl run, that's greatly going to elevate the whole room enough to give Javonte a little bit of love. Jaleel's my favorite value. Estime, I don't buy the hype. I don't see how he sees the field enough in enough situations. I think Jaleel's really interesting. I think he'll be a fun gadget player. I don't call for a big breakout. I don't think he has the pedigree or the talent to ever push for a big role similar to how like Ty Chandler, doesn't have the pedigree to ever really push for a full
Yep.
starting role. Because of those things,
1
it
minute.
just helps me give a few percentage points towards Javonte. He's an okay, not great pick. A good running back field to, I think, invest in if you can get it on the cheap, because the team could surprise a little bit.
Yeah, and for I'm gonna take your last 45 seconds here. Javonte to me is a great flex. I don't want him in my RB1 or 2 spot. I don't. If I'm down wide receivers, you know me pretty well, and I think for most of the listeners probably know me well enough by now. I want wide receivers in my flex spots. That's just how I like to build. I think they hold value better in Dynasty. I think you get more trade value out of them if you do end up letting them off your roster. To me, Javonte is like a I'd be so excited if he was on my roster and I had a bye week. I'd be great if I had 2 healthy. We all need healthy running backs. We know it's the most volatile position here. So for my last 10 seconds on Denver, quite simply, if I've got somebody that's actually healthy in my RB1 and 2 spot and my wide receivers are banged up or I've got bye weeks, I'm excited that Javonte could potentially get us a touchdown. So I don't love Denver. Nobody does. That's why we're talking about these backfields, because they are ambiguous. But there's 4 guys there, and 2 of them are going to be relevant, and one of them is just going to irritate you, and we're not sure which of those guys it's going to be yet. So I'm going to take my 3 minutes, and I'm going to talk about Tennessee, because I think if you look at, I turned the draft board off, but I have the numbers in front of me. Tony Pollard going off the board, newly acquired running back from Dallas into Tennessee for $16. Tajay Spears going off the board for $16. So it's interesting that they went for the same price. I wasn't super big on Spears coming out. I didn't like the fact that he doesn't have an ACL. At the time he was drafted, Derrick Henry was still there, and it was the Tennessee Derrick Henrys instead of the Tennessee Titans. And I think that, what was it, like a week or maybe like 2 weeks window before they signed Pollard, because they signed him relatively early in free agency, but it was like, Spears is the guy, go and trade for. If you traded him during that window and got a first out of it, you screaming value, right? You just keep, this is the basic economics, right? It's the stock market. It's sell high. Like, that's just the best possibility. The value went down immediately. I don't see a path for either one of them to be the guy. I don't see a path for either one of them to really finish higher, that much high, barring injury, of course. Everything we talk about presumes health. I think they're going to be like a poor man's Pittsburgh, who we're actually going to talk about in a couple minutes, because last year, Jalen Warren and Najee Harris finished both as RB2s. I think they were like one place from each other at the end of the season in terms of their RB20. I think it was like RB22 and 23 finish or something to that effect, maybe 24. They were within 15 or 20 points of each other. And that's how I see Pollard and Spears. And from a dynasty perspective, Spears is probably a one contract guy. He doesn't have an ACL. He's not a big body runner. He's not Derrick Henry. No one is. But like, my point is at the end of this contract, who's going to sign him to a big money free agent deal? Who's going to give him Saquon money at $12 million a year? I don't believe anybody is. And I think Pollard's best days are behind him, right? Like, we saw Will Levis in his debut throw for 4 touchdowns, and everyone was like, whoa, we were wrong. Here's the first round quarterback we all expected. And then the rest of Will Levis looked like a guy who fell out of the first round, is playing for his job this season. I firmly believe Will Levis is playing for his job this season, because if it doesn't go well, they don't have to hold on to him. It's a rookie contract. You can get rid of him at the end of this contract for nothing. You can go and bring out, somebody from the rookie class next year. It's not a great class,
quarterbacks that are backups right now. There's like 4
yeah, that's what I
starters
mean.
that
Like,
are now backups that could push him.
Could you go get Joe Flacco in a trade if you know what I mean? Like, could you go get Jameis Winston in a trade if you really needed him? So Zach Wilson will probably get cut by the Broncos when Bo Nix takes, you know what I mean? Like, it's not sexy names, but there's guys that could take Will Levis's job. What happens when Drake May becomes a starter to Jacoby Brissett next year? Does Tennessee use him as a bridge? So my point with Pollard and Spears is they both catch the ball. They both have pretty similar skill set. It's not like a fire and ice situation where, like you had last year, where Derrick Henry was going to come in and be the pounder and the bruiser, and he's Derrick Henry, so it doesn't really count. But that body type of, like, he doesn't catch the ball, and Spears was a totally different complement. To me, Pollard and Spears, it's like shades of the same color. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not something that you're like, wow, that, like, on your wall right there, you got a big orange jersey next to a blue jersey, and there's clear contrast. To me, they're both kind of vanilla. They're both kind of bland. They don't excite anybody. You can get them cheap. And honestly, in redraft, stay away. Don't even touch this backfield. Just stay away, because it's going to bring you pain. In Dynasty, if you have them, Try to sell him. I didn't pull it up before the show, but I sold Pollard as a package to get him off my roster, and I ended up getting Pacheco and KW3 out of that deal. I think I sold Connor, Pollard, and some picks. That's exactly what I did. I'm stoked on that deal, by the way. To get Pacheco and to get KW3 for Pollard off my roster, Connor, and a couple of third-round picks, give me that all day. So Tennessee, the long-term value, I don't see a second contract for Spears and Tony Pollard. Look, if he couldn't get it done last year with no Zeke and an offense where they threw the ball a zillion freaking times in Dallas, I don't see how he gets it done in a worse offense in Tennessee. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to talk about the backfield of the NFC North champions. Are they the champions of this NFC North? Is that what's happening this year? Are we predicting it?
No, we are all we hate the Packers, but we all like Detroit. Detroit's our proxy this year. All right, we just want to see reasonable adults make reasonable decisions with our young talent we're bringing in. I want to see some good parenting from our Bears this year. That's all we're hoping for. Okay,
well,
we're Detroit fans this year.
Talk about the Bear Cubs. You got 3 minutes to talk about the Chicago Bears. DeAndre Swift, $17. Roshan Johnson, $4. Khalil Herbert, $4 in this draft.
Okay, man. Remember, DeAndre Swift used to be a pretty spicy guy. He's kind of the old Jahmyr Gibbs. Remember, so when his draft class was coming in, it was kind of everyone thought Swift was going to go as the RB1 that year. Everyone thought, man, what if Swift went to the Chiefs? Man, that would be insane. The crazier thing is, what if Jonathan Taylor went to the Chiefs? Man, that would be...
yeah, let's not go down that road.
Maybe the NFL really does script it up. So the point is that the talent's there, the pedigree's there, obviously a fantastic pass-catching weapon. Here's what I'll say about Swift. I'll go about him individually, and then I'll kind of put together them as a team of what I think this backfield's going to do and what it can, because I think the entire backfield has sneaky upside. I truly believe that. And it's mostly based on, I don't think they're all elite. I think their values are just too tamed down because they got the stink of the Bears on them, and we haven't been so good at that position in a little bit there. So Swift, I think, had a kind of a quietly pretty good season with the Eagles last year, in my opinion. When I watched him on the eye test, when I was playing against Swift, my opponent, I was usually a little bit worried. High-powered offense, dude, he's going to get the rock a lot, and he's going to get the rock a lot in the red zone, except when it matters to get the touchdown. But he's going to have, good chances to kind of do something. And his yards per carry weren't crazy. I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but I do think it was still very serviceable. I believe it was above 4. I think it was mid 4s. He got almost no passes thrown his way, but we know he still has that skill set for sure. That's a Jalen Hurts thing. That's not a DeAndre Swift thing. You could put anybody over there, and I don't know if Jalen Hurts is going to throw him the ball, and I don't even know that he should all the time based on the weapons and what he can do himself. So if you have an entire season where Swift is just not getting 50, 60 plus targets, I think you're going to forget that that's his main weapon in his game. And so last year, all you did was see what he could do on his legs for the most part, and it was just fine. But he was kind of half the player that we were expecting him to be in an offense that, if it was just a regular offense too, I think maybe the Fantasy Pros guys were talking about this, where if you actually look at like the average opportunity he should have had last year, he could have been a top 10, if not much higher running back, if you just gave him league average red zone attempts. If you give him a little bit below, he's going to be way up there. So his fantasy points per game, I think people see him, okay, he didn't kill me. I didn't win a bunch of games with him, so they're lowering his value. His situation got a lot better. He got a pretty big payday in an ascending offense that's playing in a high-scoring division in a team that's come out and said, we want to use him as a pass-catching weapon. Forget DeAndre Swift, the NFL player. Think of him as the fantasy football player. We want running backs to get passes, okay? Right? We would say, right, who do you want? You're going to talk about him in a second here, I think, between Najee and Jalen Warren. We know why we're a little spicier on Warren for the most part, right? The more valuable touches, and I think that's what Swift's going to get in a good offense. And I think his upside is not elite, but it is very good with a pretty safe floor. Now, I'll make a quick case for there's a billion running backs there. No one's going to be the true one. Okay, but he is definitely the pass catcher for sure. You can say Roshan gets in on pass catching. I think Roshan's probably more like the goal line back, personally. And I think Herbert probably gets traded.
Agreed.
For the most part, I think that probably happens. If he doesn't get traded, yes, it's gonna sting a little bit, but it's gonna sting more for Roshan. Roshan's upside will be capped by Herbert and what they do. I don't think it caps Swift. I like Swift because I think he catches 50 passes, and he's going to be very, very good. He might 6.5 touchdowns on the ground, maybe 2 or 3 through the air. That wouldn't be outside of what I think is reasonable for him. Throw 1,000 yards rushing, and all of a sudden you've got a top 10 running back. So I like that. Overall backfield, Roschon, like him a lot. Didn't see him on the field a ton last year, but I do know he was fantastic at Texas. He still earned pretty great playing time behind Bijan. Had a ridiculous yards per carry and a lot of explosiveness at Texas. His yards per carry was like 6 or 7. It was absolutely
and don't
unreal.
forget he had competition from Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah,
People
that was his understudy.
Like, he's a year older, but Brooks was there, and Brooks was a first or second round draft pick. So
it's just a good pedigree. It's weird for him to be the outlier. So I'm higher. I think Roschon's a great buy low, but you might have to wait an entire half a season until it happens. I'm not overpaying. Herbert, I want him gone. Swift, I'm buying him low. I like it. He's getting a little bit older, but the way he scores fantasy points, he can age a little more like Eckler. Lower expectations, but he's going to catch a few balls. I like him.
Yeah, I mean, look, Jonathan Brooks was the first running back off the board this season as a second rounder, right? Like Texas puts him out, man. They just keep turning him over, you know what I mean? And so at the end of the day, I love what you take. I'll just say this. I've said it a couple times. I'll say it again. I think Khalil Herbert or Miles Sanders winds up in Dallas. I think it's a real possibility that Khalil Herbert winds up in Dallas. And I think you've got DeAndre Swift with the contract. You've got Roschon on a rookie deal that you drafted. I know it wasn't this regime that drafted him, but I mean, it was because Ryan Poles, but it wasn't this head coach. To me, it's like Swift has the contract, but Swift has injury history. So if Swift can stay healthy, I think Herbert goes. I think they're going to be fine with Roschon, and obviously Caleb is, can run. Caleb is, Mr. Patrick Mahomes light off script. That was his whole thing coming out. So,
quick aside, how many rushing yards Caleb Williams over under? What do you think his rushing yards are going to be this year? Because he's kind of running back in that room too.
You want me to give you a number and you tell me over under?
No, just what do you think? Give me a range. Just like where do you think? I had this question in DMs the other day. Might have even been Victorious actually.
I would say low end for me. 550 ceilings.
That's low end. Oh baby.
I don't see him as a 1,000-yard rusher. I was going to say 750 is a ceiling. What do you have?
So thrilled with that.
Where do you have?
I have right around 500.
Okay, I think he's going to run more than you think he is. More people think he is. I don't know.
I mean, don't want him to look like Justin Fields. Maybe that's it. Maybe I'm like, whoa, slow down, but it didn't work out too well last time. You better start throwing that ball. That's what we paid you to do.
And they've got good receivers, right? I mean, that's the one thing that like Justin Fields, to be fair, we all know the narrative, but like Fields didn't have the players, and I don't know if he had the players, if he's really a good quarterback or not. We have to figure that out. But
I think he'll rush.
All right,
like
maybe
Mahomes.
I'm high on that.
He's Mahomes. Yeah, Mahomes did a lot of rushing this year because he's athletic. He did it when he needed to, and when it was just open. How many times did Mahomes scramble for 30 yards when everyone was just like, he's not even on the line of scrimmage. He's running this way. And then we just go down gently. I think he'll have a lot more of that versus what Kyler did when he was rushing around. And so that's why I think he's limited, because I think the coaching is going to be like, look, we're not winning a Super Bowl. Calm down. Nothing too crazy. But he'll get an easy 500. If he tried, I'm with you.
So I'm a little high on that. Fair enough. But Mahomes has been running. I just pulled his numbers real quick. Since 2020, Mahomes has run for 300 plus yards in 4 straight seasons, and then he was in like the 200s a couple years before. Then obviously his rookie season he didn't play, but okay, so 300 to 500 yards. All right, so I'm a little high, but on the spot, not bad. Last ambiguous backfield as we wrap the show. I want to talk about Pittsburgh because it's difficult, right? So I was pulling some numbers here. Jalen Warren in that auction draft that we just had up went for $20. Najee Harris for $15, so $5 difference. Najee is technically the starter. That's what we anticipate, and he went for $5 less. I mentioned last season I thought they were a couple places from each other. I was a little bit wrong. I said running back 22 and running back 25. I was wrong. Najee was running back 20. Warren was running back 25. In half PPR, Warren scored 165 points, and in half PPR, Najee scored 181. So I was pretty close on that, about 15-point difference. So, look, it's difficult for me with Najee because you've seen it, and you had this anticipation for him coming out of Alabama that he was going to be leaping over defenders, and he was going to be the guy. And everyone, I don't know if I should say everyone, Most people love how Mike Tomlin is going to only use one running back. That's been his thing. He did it with Le'Veon. He did it with Bettis. With Bettis. I mean, he's done it. That's his thing, right? One run. It's kind of like Sean McVay. I'm going to have one running back. Now he's got two, and now he's got Arthur Smith. And so I've been on the Warren camp for a lot longer than I think most people have. I like the explosiveness. I love the pass catching upside. I think he's a faster, more dynamic player than Najee is. Najee's a bit more of a bruiser, but Najee is I think it's like 2.5 yards, 2.3 yards a carry. Like, it's not over 3. It's not sexy. He doesn't have breakaway speed. Unless you're playing that week 17 game in the championship.
Except
like I was, and he got an open offensive line. Thanks a lot for that, Cleveland Browns. He couldn't make one tackle. Cost me a championship. Cost like 20,000 other people a championship too. But my point is Najee's not a guy that's going to run away from you. He's not a guy that's going to catch 100 passes. He's not going to get those targets. So it's an ambiguous backfield because in this situation, I don't see it as an RB1 and an RB2. It is absolutely a 1A and a 1B. And I think it could be either guy's week. And you made this point. I'm going to steal your point because I thought it was brilliant. I think you made this point a couple months. We talk so often, I don't remember when you made it. But you had said to me that Najee could just be completely run. He could be the guy this season because they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. So they could just run the what out of him this season, run him into the ground, and then say, see ya, goodbye. We're going to pay Jaylen Warren, which I 100% think is what's going to happen. I don't think they're going to pay him on a contract next year. I think they're going to pay Warren, and I think they're going to either draft another guy or trade for somebody and just bring in a compliment. So to me, Najee's value is, I honestly, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too far, Kendall, but what would you trade? First of all, would you trade to acquire Najee? Because I wouldn't.
At this point in the season, absolutely not. Even if I had 0 running backs, I'm not doing it. Would I do for it this year? If I'm in a situation where, okay, my RB2 is down, my RB3 is trash, I'm a wide receiver heavy build, these are what get you to the Dynasty playoffs. So I need an RB2 and I have to buy somebody, right? Sure. We found ourselves in this archetypal situation. Yeah. You don't want to, one, you can't overpay because all the solid guys, you just can't you can't get a high enough tier guy. I don't think you'll have enough assets if you're making a deep run, and you're only trading for running back if you're making a deep run. So yeah, what are you trading? Am I trading him? I still don't want him, though. I still don't see the massive upside at the end of this one season. And also, I think to your point, I think his value just could disintegrate next year to the point where it's not good. Would I buy him for a second to try to make a title run because I need an RB2? Sure. But with all the other guys I like more, I'm not doing it. There's still I would rather have
Najee winning you a championship, and
I'd rather have Pollard and Spears. I'd take Pollard and Spears over Najee as very similar adjacent players. I just think Pollard and Spears at least have a couple of years with a guaranteed role, and I have no idea what Najee is next year and to whom. So it's like you have to make a disgusting lesser of two evils. That for me is how I answered my question. Where it's like, hey, do I want to go after Najee? It's like I'm talking about buying Tony Pollard. And that's how I feel about Najee. So it's a tier worse than that decision, in my opinion.
I mean, James Conner is a free agent next year. If the Cardinals don't bring him back, there's a world that exists that Najee goes and plays for the Cardinals behind Trey Benson as the backup. You know what I mean? I see that kind of. I just picked a team and I was like, who do I absolutely know has got a running back who's older that's not going to be on the team? So yeah, to me, it's like I wouldn't trade for him in season. I don't think he's pushing you over the top to win a championship. I don't see a path for him to truly be the guy barring injury. And even we've seen it. And this is the other piece. And this is my argument against Najee. We've seen it when Warren wasn't there, when Warren wasn't used as much as he has been, where Najee still wasn't the guy. I have to go and pull his numbers real quick. But if my memory's right, I think his best fantasy season was his rookie year. Let me pull it real quick just to be sure. Yeah, he was the RB4. 263 points in half PPR. He's been the RB4, 14, and 20. So I didn't pull the full PPR, but it's probably not going to be that much different. But my point being is that his best season, he's actually gotten worse from a fantasy perspective all 3 years in the league. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option. Jaylen Warren has gotten better. I think Jaylen Warren, it's Arthur Smith. All the people, and I'm one of them, who had hashtag free Bijan for all those weeks of please give your best player the ball, Arthur. And Arthur Smith going, well, I can't believe they fired me. No shit, dude. Like, of course they fired you. You didn't give your best player the ball. You don't see them taking the ball out of Michael Jordan's hands, out of Kobe Bryant's hands. Like, they're getting the last shot. Give Bijan the ball. So I think there's a world where Najee and Warren finish very similarly this season to what they did last year, and almost an exact replication. I think they both can finish as RB2s. I think they both finish within 15 to 20, maybe 30 points of each other. And I think they both finish within a couple points, or excuse me, a couple of slots in the RB overall RB finish. So yeah, it's a difficult situation. I think if you're, in a vacuum, I would trade for Warren. I've also traded Warren. I just traded Warren away because of the hype, and I was able to get a couple pieces that I ended up moving and flipping. And what it ended up becoming is I moved Warren, I got some guys in, I moved those pieces out, I got some new guys in, I ended up getting James Cook out of it. So very happy at the end of the day when my roster is looking from Jalen Warren to now upgrading that position into James Cook. I'm very excited by that.
Mhm.
So difficult backfields, obviously a lot to talk about. And as we wrap the show next week, Kendall, let's do some trades. Let's get the people what they really need. Let's talk about some trades you've received, trades I've received, trades that we've heard about, people have asked us about. If you're listening to the show, you can jump into Sleeper at P Ruskin, and you can send me a DM there, and we'll be sure to get your trades onto the show. Post them in the comments. Victorious, look at this, is awesome. Najee seems like a
Right?
future Cowboy.
Look at that.
Brilliant.
Get a pretty good
I
point
love it.
just above that too. That makes Warren even better, like clearly long term. That's pretty sharp there, actually. Yeah.
Yep, restricted free agent. So yeah, I mean, like to me, I think Warren's the guy they're going to keep. I just don't see them re-signing him. So, Kendall, as we wrap the show, tell the folks one last time where they can find you and where your content is. And as always, brother, thanks for being a guest tonight, man. Love hanging out with you.
Always, man. And keep following Phil. He's we're gonna do some things in this whole content thing. Once we learn how to do it and find people that actually know how to produce stuff online, we'll gladly talk about it. If you like talking Dynasty, just fantasy football in general, definitely come check me out over at the Fantasy Football Tavern. Always having good times. Probably having a few drinks as well. And Phil is definitely going to be on the show quite a bit. Should be pretty fun. I love draft season. Draft season is almost as much fun for me as the actual NFL season. And I don't mean you think alike with that too. So yeah. Come watch a couple videos. I think most recent, the ones we got coming up, me and Phil are good. We've got a couple projects coming up together. I went through a full Dynasty buy low, sell high series. If you're looking to find some targets, that's a good one. We've got Dynasty debates, some hot takes coming up here pretty soon. The divisional team by team breakdown is coming up. So yeah, come check out both me and Phil shows. But if you're watching, please hit subscribe to Phil's channel. We got to get him up over 100, and then we got to get him up over 1,000, and then we got to do that to me too. So if it's not
Some
too much
increments to hit
trouble,
before there.
humble ask, please click that subscribe button for my boy Phil.
Appreciate it. Yeah, Kendall, as always, thanks for tuning into the show, folks. Obviously, if you're listening here, you can catch me every Thursday night at 7 p.m. We'll be bringing in guests. We'll be doing some panels. We'll do some back and forth so you can hear both sides of player takes. For the podcast community, you can follow along, or in case I need to stop saying follow along, right? You listen along on Patreon. You can find me there at the Extra Point. You can also find me on Spotify at the Extra Point _FF. It may not underscore, but it's the Extra Point FFB. And trying to get the subscriptions up, like Kendall said. So love hanging out with you, man. Great show as always. Really love talking football with you. And for those that are listening, we will see you next Thursday, 7 p.m., and we will do the trade show. Have a great night. Thanks for hanging out with us.